What's up everybody, this is Rob from UpNext MMA. In this video, we'll be continuing our series of top 5 broken MMA bromances. Talking about these relationships between MMA personalities that, they just broke down over time. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. Alright, the next one on our list is Henderson Silva and Vitor Belfort. Now, these two, they go back. They are both originally from Brazil, and they both actually spent time training at Shoot Box back when they were really young. Henderson Silva was famous for coming out of Shoot Box, and Vitor spent some time there as well. A lot of other famous Brazilian strikers came out of there as well, Vanderlei Silva being one of them. But Belfort, I think, also trained with Anderson at Black House as well. And they had a relationship, they had a relationship for quite some time. However, that you bring in UFC championships and life-changing money and status, those relationships can go down the drain pretty quick. Anderson was not happy when Vitor challenged him for the UFC middleweight championship. Belfort, quote unquote, betrayed Silva and his camp, and they turned on each other. There was a lot of history between Belfort and Silva, like I mentioned earlier. We all know that Vitor Belfort's sister was kidnapped and she was never found. So Anderson was there to comfort him and give his support a lot at that time. Their friendship was rock steady and they were very close. But when Belfort accepted that offer to fight Anderson Silva, Anderson took it as a personal insult. Belfort looked at it like it was business, but then, when Anderson came at him and said, this isn't cool, Belfort, he attacked back. He started to say that Anderson, I think, wasn't a real Brazilian or something like that. They went back and forth with insults for a while. Needless to say, Silva went as far to say that, their friendship was fake, and, it is what it is. Now, these two fought at UFC 126. I think this was February of 2011. I remember watching this live. And their fight was pretty competitive up until Anderson landed a front kick from out of nowhere and knocked out Vitor. It's one of Anderson's most infamous knockouts. You can find it all over the web. But, that put a stamp on the end of the feud. I don't think these two are friends anymore, even till this day. You don't hear much about it, but yeah, another friendship that broke apart over a UFC title. It is what it is, right? This is one a lot of people also don't know about, is Dan Henderson and Matt Lindland. These two actually started out as training partners for quite some time, and actually used to hang out pretty frequently outside training. They were pretty good friends, and they used to do all the things that friends do, drink beer, kick it, and next minute they're chilling. Pretty soon after that, they're suing each other. And basically, their disagreement stems back to 1999, when he and Randy Couture started up an MMA camp called Team Quest. Matt Lindland joined Randy and Dan, and he was given stake in the business. Matt started using the Team Quest name and logo, I believe, for his own gyms or, on his own products without any issue. Now, I think Henderson wanted to take the rights back to that stuff, and that's when the dispute broke out over ownership of the gym, as well as, all the other naming rights and all that stuff. Now, this is one that I don't think has been settled yet in court, so I don't want to comment on, the facts and this and that because I just don't know. But I think what's very clear is these two are not on great terms anymore. So, just another two legends, who were good friends for quite some time. But unfortunately, money and business got in the way. It's just one of those things in MMA. The commonality I see with a lot of these bromances, or at least good friendships that diminish over time, usually happens over money or the chance to fight for a UFC championship. And those usually break up a lot of great friendships that usually never get repaired. So it's funny though, you don't see that a lot as much anymore, but it was a big thing back in the day. But anyway, all right, on to the next one. This is one not a lot of people know about actually, or flies under the radar. Is actually Matt Hughes and Matt Serra. These guys are actually training partners for one short time. They met in a bar and became friends from the get-go, I believe, but they were also training partners for a short while. They both, because remember, Matt Hughes was one of the pioneers for bringing integrating jiu-jitsu into that wrestling base. A lot of wrestlers back when Matt Hughes was champion pretty much stuck to just getting guys to the ground and grounding and pounding and all that stuff. Matt Hughes was the first dominant wrestler to start choking people, landing arm bars, that kind of stuff. And he trained with a lot of famous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, and Matt Serra was one of those guys that he had spent a short time training with. Moreover, with that, fast forward to 2006 or 2007? No, 2006. Serra was a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter Season 4, and Matt Hughes was a guest coach, and George St. Pierre, I think, was Matt Serra's coach. And you can find clips of this online. I mean, Matt Hughes is just a complete jerk throughout the show, especially to George. I mean, he insulted him because several times. For those of you who don't know, Matt Hughes defeated George St. Pierre, I think 2 years earlier, defeating him by armbar. And George was winning the fight, by the way. He was beating the crap out of Matt Hughes, but he was able to get George to the ground and submit him via armbar. And you can always find this infamous clip of Matt Hughes taunting George because there's eventually going to be a rematch. I think the rematch is already scheduled actually. But you can see Matt Hughes taunting George, telling him, "Hey man, let me teach you some armbar defense." Oh my gosh. Anyway, Matt Serra saw that, and he saw it as very disrespectful. And he was just like, I don't like that guy. I thought he was cool, but, you don't rub that in somebody's face unless, they're getting into it with you first. And George doesn't start confrontations with anybody. But, the Matt Hughes was known for being a jerk, by the way, to a lot of, people he didn't like. But anyway, for those of you who don't know the rest of the story, Matt Serra so George St. Pierre ended up beating Matt Hughes at UFC 65. He became the champion. Then Matt Serra won the Ultimate Fighter and went on to fight George at UFC 69 in April of 2007. Matt Serra was a huge underdog, and he went on to knock out George St. Pierre in one of the biggest upsets ever. I think still till this day, the biggest upset in a title fight ever. I think the only one that comes close is Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey, but it was a huge upset. Or maybe TJ Dillashaw versus Renan Barao. That's a pretty big one too. But anyway, I digress. Serra responded to Matt Hughes, basically calling him out after the fight and saying that Matt Hughes is a bully. I want to fight that guy. I want to put a beating on him. But they actually didn't fight anytime soon after that. They were supposed to fight at UFC 79, I think, but Matt Serra had to pull out due to a back injury. George ended up replacing him, and he beat Matt again, leading to a rematch between Matt Serra and George St. Pierre. And George beat the absolute brakes off Matt Serra in the rematch. I mean, it wasn't competitive at all. And after that, Matt Hughes, after he lost to George a third time, he was knocked out by Thiago Alves at UFC 85. I think that was in June of 2008, and he took some time off. And anyway, these two met at UFC 98 in May of 2009, I believe. And they finally settled the score, and Matt Hughes beat him by unanimous decision in a pretty close fight. It was actually very entertaining and lived up to expectations, but I still don't think those two are very close till this day. But, you know, 'tis MMA, 'tis bromance for ya. That's it for part 2, and that concludes our series over the top 5 broken MMA bromances. I hope you enjoyed our list. Thank you for watching until the end. If you're new here, please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. We have multiple videos coming out for you every single week. Let us know your thoughts on any of the bromances on this list. Especially, you know, the one that I like talking about the most is Matt Hughes and Matt Serra, as well as Henderson and Vitor. A lot of people don't know about those ones because, once again, they just get lost in time. Especially with Henderson and Vitor, they get lost in translation. A lot of people didn't know there was a lot of tension coming up until that fight. But, you know, they settled the score and Henderson won. But what do you guys think? Do you think that had that fight gone on, that Vitor would have mounted more of a challenge? Do you guys think that, you know, that their relationship was fake going up until the fight? What do you think of Matt Hughes and Matt Serra? You know, do you think that Matt was being a jerk throughout that entire time? Do you think Matt Serra was justified? What do you think about George St. Pierre just, you know, absolutely making them irrelevant in their feud, just like go off to the side for a few years? Tell me what you guys think. I always love talking MMA with you guys and discussing current topics, so feel free to tell me what you think in the comments. Anyway, thank you guys, love you, appreciate you, talk to you soon.